Well, hello, everyone, and Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for joining me here. We have moved on to a very, very interesting section of the text. You know, I would say that about every single section, no matter where we are. Whatever section of the text you have opened to is the most interesting and most important one. So that's where we find ourselves today. And we've moved on to chapter 3 of the text, section 1, which is entitled Atonement Without Sacrifice. So let's talk about the without sacrifice, and let's talk about something that Jesus tells us right up front here needs to be cleared up before we can move past our fear of miracles, any residual fear of miracles that may still be there needs to, of course, be looked at. And this idea that we're going to cover will help us to do that, to look at it and move beyond it. So the idea here is that it is the resurrection and not the crucifixion that established the atonement. All right. It's the resurrection that established the atonement, not the crucifixion. We should be placing our attention on the resurrection, not the crucifixion. So if you did not grow up in the Judeo-Christian tradition, let me share some of my experience with you here. And, just being alive here in the world, especially if you're from the West. And I know a number of you are from North and South America, Australia, Europe, right? Even if you're not from a Western nation, these ideas from Christianity have become so pervasive in global culture that so many of us are familiar with them. Now, I grew up in the United States in not one, but two fundamentalist Christian traditions, neither of which I practice now as an adult. The first church my parents left, and the second one I left when I got my driver's license, which at the time in the US state of New Mexico in the 1980s was age 15. So that's how old we needed to be in order to drive legally. Yes, I was one of those kids that skipped out on plenty of Sunday schools. And why did I do that? Well, it wasn't because I found it boring necessarily. It was because I no longer jived with what I was being taught. It didn't resonate with me any longer. And I know that a number of you may have had a similar experience. The emphasis that some people place on the crucifixion emphasizes the body, Jesus's body. And from taking a glance, even if you've just taken nothing more than a glance at A Course in Miracles, you'll know that this contains some ideas that you didn't learn in Sunday school. I was not told in Sunday school that we're not a body, nor was I taught that there is no world. Nor was I taught this idea that Jesus is presenting to us right here, right in the very first paragraph of section 1. And it's that the resurrection is what matters, not the crucifixion, not the body. People have attached enormous importance to Jesus's body. Think of global iconography. Let's put it that way and leave it right there. Yeah. How many different ways is Jesus depicted as bleeding with a crown of thorns, hanging from the cross with a very mournful expression on his face? Tremendous emphasis is placed on the body. That tasteless wafer at communion, what does that represent again? Yeah, right. And here we have the exact opposite teaching. I am not a body. I am free, for I am still as God created me. Worthy of 20 consecutive workbook lessons with the rhyming scheme intentional so that it sticks with us. And it does, doesn't it? It's deeply resonant. It's the resurrection that matters. That established the atonement, not the crucifixion, and the attendant idea that God allowed his son to suffer. That God said, yeah, I love you, but we're going to let them drive nails into your flesh and kill you. Yeah, we're going to let that happen. Now, if you ever sat in a Sunday school classroom, as I did, thinking, that can't be. Perfect love would never condemn his own son. Perfect love would never condemn anyone. It's incapable of condemnation. I remember thinking these things at age 11, at age 12, and maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe you're thinking them right now. Why would perfect love condemn? Well, it wouldn't. It's not capable of it. Love extends itself. It does not even look on condemnation and blame. That's our game here as ego-clinging, self-sustaining survival units. That's our game here as human beings in the world, is special relationships, blame, persecution, all of that. And the reason that it's important for us to understand this is so that we may get rid of our fear of God. If one believes that God is capable of chastising certain people and loving others and currying favorites based on how much money they donated to their building of choice or something like that, or how much money they've got, or how big their military is, or something like that. Now, if you believe that God is vindictive and cruel, then you're going to project that fear onto your brother. Guaranteed, inevitable. This is what projection is our own unconscious guilt rises sometimes to the surface, and we can't handle that feeling of fear, of guilt, so we attempt to place it outside of us. And pretty much it's blaming someone or something else for our problems. And there's really no place to hide in spirituality in the end, because we can dance around this all we want, but ultimately, we're the ones that are responsible for our own thoughts. We're the ones that are responsible for our own forgiveness lessons and practice. And rather than looking at that as something dreadful to be postponed indefinitely, Jesus invites us to look on it with gratitude. This is a beautiful thing, that having made this psychodramatic mess, we can unmake it right now, not when we die in 20 years, 30 years, 25 minutes. We don't know when that's going to come, but we don't have to wait. Isn't that nice? I wasn't told that in Sunday school either. And I know that some of you can relate to this. So if someone believes that God persecuted his own son and allowed him to be nailed to a cross cruelly and paraded through the streets and flogged and all of that very Roman stuff, it's very Roman, isn't it? Yeah. And if you believe that God would allow that, then of course you're going to exhibit a fear of God. That produces fear. It produces the thought, holy shit, is he going to allow this to happen to me? Because then he's already allowed me to go through a fabulously heartbreaking breakup, and maybe it's a divorce, or maybe he allowed you to get fired from your job or something, or maybe somebody rear-ended you when you were driving recently, right? All kinds of things happen to us in the world, and it's not God that caused all of that. God doesn't play favorites. Perfect love knows only itself. It extends itself. And Jesus tells us right here in the second paragraph that he didn't suffer because we're bad. He didn't sacrifice himself for our sins so that we could go forth and do whatever the hell we wanted, knowing that we're covered, so to speak. Right? That's not what happened. He's inviting us to take a different look at this and to look on the teaching of the crucifixion from a completely different perspective. The teaching, I am not a body. It's the resurrection that really established the atonement, isn't it? We're not bodies. That's the lesson. That's the lesson. So, God doesn't judge. We do. God doesn't judge. Perfect love does not judge. And perfect love does not send forth his son to be slaughtered, allowing that, condoning it, thinking, yeah, I'll just let this happen here this time. No, no, not at all. Now, if you were one of those kids, like I was, that sat through these lectures and presentations thinking, I don't believe that. That can't possibly be. This seems contradictory here. I mean, it is. A loving God doesn't persecute. Who can believe that and be sane in the world? Really, who can believe that, maintain that thought that a loving God persecutes at whim? And who can believe that and be sane? Who can believe that without exhibiting fear at every turn, rejecting it? God's not vengeful. God doesn't judge. We're invited to forgive rather than judge. So these are important and foundational ideas. And when you come to appreciate that, well, a loving God does not condemn and is not capable of that, does not know condemnation, that's not how it happens. When you come to realize that, whenever that may be, maybe you've already realized that for yourself, and maybe this is something that's a ways off for you, wherever you are. I can tell you from my own experience that when I first read this portion of the text 10 years ago, so it's been now 10 years since I first picked up this material, I was very excited because this confirmed what that 11, 12-year-old kid was thinking this can't be. This just can't be. And sometimes I would ask the question and not get a satisfactory response at all. I'd get a response along the lines of, well, I don't know, which was the most honest response of them all, actually, from an adult was, yeah, I don't know. And some people would say, well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. And okay, well, still doesn't answer my question. But this does. And it rings true. It rang true for me the very first time I read it. And perhaps you've had the same experience. But there's no need for us to be afraid of miracles. They are what we're here to do. If you want to call it our birthright, yes. Yes, just yes. Yes. Let's extend the miracle to our brother. And understand that Jesus didn't hang on a cross and appear to die because we're sinners and we're bad. There is no sin. God has no ego to be offended. How can there be any such thing as sin? There's no original sin. There's no unoriginal sin. It does not exist. Maybe that is something that you find incredibly relieving. And I hope that you do, but I don't know that you do. You may find this incredibly challenging. Welcome to the path. This course aims to get us to a place where we've rearranged our entire perception 180 degrees. That means questioning the foundations of everything that we've been taught. I mean, we question each other in the world. You may be questioning me, which I welcome. Do it. Ask questions, but don't stop with just this projected image on your screen, which is all you're seeing, by the way. What you're hearing is your inner teacher. That's the voice that has you exploring your spiritual path in the first place. So if something resonates with you, it's your inner teacher talking to you. Question anything, really, that you want to. I mean, you can question any single thing that appears to come out of my mouth here. But don't stop with that. Keep going and don't be afraid to unearth everything. Keep questioning by all means. But while you're at it, question the very foundations of everything that you now believe. Overturn every stone, so to speak. Look at all of it. Raise it all to question. We're not invited to do anything more than that on the spiritual path, are we? Nor are we invited to do anything less. So this can seem very threatening. And when that occurs, that means that you're on the path. That means you're on the right track. Because this isn't all rainbows and unicorns. There are plenty of rainbows, so to speak, and plenty of unicorns, and plenty of tremendous blissful moments. But this is about forgiveness. It's about raising to our awareness some things that we'd prefer to keep hidden and releasing them. Undoing the ego in the process. Which is why we're here. That's why we're here. All right. So there's always plenty more to say about being an 11 or 12-year-old in Sunday school. Long ago, decades ago. But I'm going to leave it at that here for today. Here is the subscription button, and I would love to have you, a little red arrow right here. And please join me here. I really, really welcome comments and questions. And in February of this year, in about a month's time, I'll be starting a weekly live stream, which will be up to an hour per session. You'll have the ability to interact with me live, and we'll be able to go deeper on to some of these teachings. That'll be every week. And stay tuned for details. I'm still hashing those out, but stay tuned for that. This YouTube channel with these recordings that I run about 5 to 6 days a week, these will still be available. I'll continue to do this because there's plenty of text for us to continue to go through. Yeah. One forgiveness lesson at a time. All right. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you soon.